The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched wide like a massive bowl turned upside down. Each seat held a different alien species, and their strange bodies filled the air with weird smells and odd sounds. Captain Kang Wu sat in the human section, which was really just 3 chairs pushed against the back wall near the emergency exit. For 3 long years he had come to these meetings. Every single time he listened to the aliens talk about humans, like they were talking about pets or farm animals. The big purple creatures called Vorthons always spoke first because they thought they owned half the galaxy. Their leader stood up on 4 thick legs and waved 6 arms around while talking about how humans were too stupid to understand real technology. The crystal people from Nexus Prime made musical sounds instead of talking normal words, but everyone had translation devices. The crystals always said the same thing, that Earth was a dirty little planet with nothing important to offer. They sparkled and chimed while they insulted every human achievement from the past 1,000 years. Kang Wu just sat there. He never moved except to blink or breathe. His face showed nothing like a stone statue that someone carved and forgot. About the other human diplomats tried to argue back, but their voices got lost in the noise. Nobody listened to humans anyway. Commander Park Jin sat next to his captain and wondered why Kang Wu never said anything the commander had served with. Kang Wu for 15 years. They had fought together in the colony wars when pirates tried to steal human settlements. Park Jin knew his captain was not afraid of anything. So why did he stay quiet when aliens called humans worthless? The meetings always followed the same pattern. First, the Vorthons would complain about something. Then the crystal beings would agree with them. After that, the snake-like creatures called Sethrians would suggest that humans should be grateful for being allowed. In the same room, the bird people from the cloud worlds would chirp and flutter about how humans bred too fast and used too many resources. Today felt different, though. The air in the Great Hall seemed thicker, and the alien voices sounded more angry than usual. Ambassador Li Na from the Zephyrian Collective had requested special speaking time. Her people looked like tall, thin humans, but with silver skin and black eyes that never blinked. Li Na stood up, and her voice carried across the whole chamber without any help from machines. Her people could do that, make their voices go anywhere they wanted. She started talking about the Outer Rim territories where humans had built mining colonies. These mining worlds were far from Earth in places where no other species wanted to live. The planets were too hot or too cold or had air that would kill most aliens. But humans could live anywhere if they tried hard enough. They had built cities on these dead worlds and found valuable metals and crystals. Li Na said that humans had no right to these worlds. She said that just because humans could survive, there did not mean they should own them. The minerals belonged to the galaxy, not to one primitive species. She suggested that all human colonies should be moved to special areas where the superior species could watch them and make sure they worked properly. The other aliens made happy noises when they heard this. The Vorthons stomped their feet, which meant they agreed. The crystal people chimed like bells. The snake creatures hissed with pleasure. Even the peaceful bird people chirped approval. Commander Park Jin felt his hands turn into fists. He looked at Captain Kang Wu, expecting to see anger on his face. But the captain still looked like a statue. His dark eyes watched everything but showed nothing. Park Jin wondered how anyone could stay so calm while listening to talk about turning humans into slaves. Li Na kept talking. She said humans were like children who found toys they could not understand. The mining equipment, the spaceships, the weapon systems, all of it was too advanced for human minds to really grasp. She said humans were dangerous because they used technology without wisdom. They were like babies playing with fire. The worst part came when Li Na started talking about population control. She said there were too many humans and they were spreading to too many worlds. The galaxy would be better if human numbers were reduced to manageable levels, maybe 10 billion humans total spread across a few dozen worlds under proper supervision. Captain Kang Wu had been coming to these meetings since he was promoted to head the human military delegation. He was not a diplomat or a politician. He was a soldier who had spent 30 years fighting to protect human colonies from pirates, raiders, and sometimes from aliens who thought humans were easy targets. Everyone knew his story. how he had held the line at Kepler 7 when 3,000 colonists were trapped behind enemy lines, how he had led the rescue mission to Terra Nova when slavers tried to capture an entire human city, how he had negotiated the prisoner exchange at Wolf Station that saved 500 human soldiers from torture camps, but in these meetings he never spoke. The other humans did the talking, Dr. Kim. So the chief scientist, Ambassador Cho Min, the trade representative general, Nam Ho, the military advisor. They all tried their best to make the aliens understand that humans deserved respect. The aliens never listened. They would let the humans talk for a few minutes, then go back to discussing humans like they were not even in the room. It was like having a conversation about dogs while the dogs sat nearby, wagging their tails today. Li Na was finishing her speech about human population control. The other aliens were making approving sounds. The Vorthon leader was already standing up to add his support. The crystal beings were chiming in harmony. The snake creatures were hissing agreement. That was when something changed in the room. The temperature seemed to drop, or maybe it just felt colder. Captain Kang Wu was moving. He stood up slowly like a mountain rising from the ground. His chair made a small sound as he pushed it back. Every eye in the great hall turned to look at him. Some aliens had never seen him move before. They thought he might be some kind of human statue or maybe a robot. The silence grew thick and heavy. Commander Park. Jin held his breath, Dr. Kim. So stopped writing in her notebook. Ambassador Cho Min looked up from his data pad. General Nam. Ho put down his coffee cup. Captain Kang Wu took one step forward, then another. His boots made soft sounds on the smooth floor, but in the silence those sounds seemed loud as thunder. He walked past the other humans, past the empty space where no aliens wanted to sit near humans, past the invisible line that separated the important species from the unimportant ones. He walked to the center of the great hall, where the speaking platform stood waiting. The same platform where aliens had stood for 3 years talking about what to do with the human problem. The platform where no human had ever been invited to speak. The aliens watched him with confusion and growing concern. The Vorthon leader started to say something but stopped. The crystal beings stopped their musical humming. The snake creatures coiled nervously in their seats. Captain Kang Wu reached the platform and stopped. He turned around slowly to face the assembled aliens. His dark eyes swept across the crowd, taking in every face, every expression, every sign of fear or anger or curiosity. For 3 years he had listened. For 3 years he had absorbed every insult, every threat, every plan to reduce humanity to slavery. For 3 years he had learned exactly what each alien species thought about humans and what they planned to do about the human problem. Now, for the first time in 3 years, Captain Kang Wu was going to speak. Captain Kang Wu stood on the speaking platform and looked out at the sea of alien faces. The great hall had never been so quiet. Even the air recycling systems seemed to hold their breath. The aliens who had been talking about human slavery just moments before now stared at the human soldier who had finally decided to speak. His voice, when it came, was not loud, but it carried to every corner of the massive chamber. It was the voice of a man who had seen too many battles and buried too many friends. It was steady and calm, like deep water that runs silent but strong. "I have listened," he said, and those 3 words seemed to echo in the sudden stillness. "For 3 years, I have sat in that corner and listened to every word you have spoken. About my people, I have heard you call us primitive animals. I have heard you say we are too stupid to understand technology. I have heard you plan to reduce our numbers and put us in camps like farm animals." The Vorthon leader shifted uncomfortably. On his 4 legs, his 6 arms twitched as if he wanted to interrupt, but something in the human's voice made him stay quiet. The crystal beings had stopped their musical humming completely. The snake creatures coiled tighter in their seats. "You think? Because we do not have your advanced ships that we are weak." Kang Wu continued. "You think because our planets are young that we have no wisdom. You think because we smile and try to be polite that we are afraid of you. You have made a mistake. The biggest mistake in galactic history, Ambassador Lee." Na stood up from her seat. Her silver skin seemed to glow with anger. "How dare you speak to your betters this way?" she said in her voice that could reach anywhere. Human, you forget your place. We have been generous allowing your species to even attend these meetings. Kang Wu turned to look directly at her, and his eyes were like black ice. I know exactly what place you think we should have. He said, the place of slaves working in your mines, the place of servants cleaning your ships, the place of livestock kept in pens for your convenience. The human captain reached into his uniform jacket and pulled out a small device. It looked like nothing special, just a simple communication unit. But when he activated it, something changed in the room. The air itself seemed to vibrate with hidden energy. Commander Park Jin. This is Captain Kang Wu. He spoke into the device. Execute Protocol 7 far across the galaxy on a dozen different worlds. Human commanders received the same message. Protocol 7 was not in any official military manual. It was not written down anywhere. It existed only in the minds of a few dozen human officers who had spent 3 years preparing for this exact moment. The mining world of Kepler 7. Captain Nam Ho received the signal he was supposed to be delivering a routine supply shipment to the orbital station. The Vorthans who ran the station treated human delivery crews like servants, making them wait for hours in cargo bays and insulting them for entertainment. But Captain Nam Ho's ship was not really a cargo vessel. The containers in his hold did not contain mining supplies. They contained something much more dangerous. Human soldiers and weapons that had been disguised as everyday trade goods. The Vorthan station commander was in the middle of laughing at a joke about human stupidity when Nam Ho's ship suddenly changed. Everything happened at once. The fake cargo containers opened and revealed missile launchers. The ship's engines that seemed slow and outdated suddenly burned with 3 times their normal power. The communication array that looked primitive began jamming every frequency the Vorthans used. The station shields that had protected Vorthan installations for over 500 years met weapons they had never seen before. Human engineers had spent 3 years studying Vorthan technology during those polite trade visits. They had learned exactly how the shields worked and more, importantly, how to make them fail. The shield generators overloaded in cascading failure. The station defensive guns tried to track targets that moved in patterns no computer could predict. The Vorthan crews panic as their invincible fortress became a helpless target in less than 10 minutes. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime homeworld of the Crystal Beings, Captain Cho Min was leading what appeared to be a cultural exchange mission. Her ship had been cleared to land in the Crystal Cities because the beings wanted to show off their beautiful harmonic architecture to primitive humans. The Crystal Beings communicated through musical frequencies that could travel through their crystalline structures across entire continents. When they sang together, their cities would resonate and glow with collected harmony. It was the most beautiful sight in the galaxy, and they were proud to share it with backward humans. Captain Cho Min team spread through the Crystal Cities with instruments that looked like simple recording devices. The crystals were happy to demonstrate their harmonic abilities. They sang louder and more beautifully than ever before, wanting to impress their human guests. What the Crystal Beings did not know was that human scientists had been studying their harmonic frequencies for 3 years. Every song, every communication, every resonant frequency had been recorded and analyzed. The humans had discovered something the crystals never knew about themselves. Their harmonic network had a critical frequency, a specific sound that would cause their crystal structures to vibrate in destructive patterns. Instead of beautiful music, it would create a feedback loop that would shatter their cities like glass hit with a hammer when Captain Cho Min activated her devices. They did not record crystal songs. They broadcast the critical frequency on every harmonic channel at once. The effect was immediate and devastating. The beautiful crystal spires that had stood for thousands of years began to crack and crumble. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the aliens were beginning to understand that something terrible was happening. Emergency signals were flooding in from across the galaxy. Vorthan military bases going silent. Crystal worlds reporting catastrophic system failures. Snake creature hive fleets losing coordination. The Vorthan leader pointed all 6 arms at Captain Kang Wu. "What have you done?" he roared. "What trickery is this?" Kang Wu smiled for the first time in 3 years, and it was not a pleasant smile. "This is what happens when you mistake patience for weakness," he said. You spent 3 years telling us we were too primitive to be dangerous. You were wrong. Commander Yang Su had been waiting on the edge of Zephyrian space with a small fleet of human ships that looked like harmless research vessels. The Zephyrians had allowed them to study their hive mind network because they thought primitive humans could never understand something so advanced. But Yang Su team had found the one thing the hive mind could not defend against: a simple computer virus designed to make the shared consciousness confused about friend and enemy. When she released it into their network through a routine data exchange, the entire Zephyrian fleet began attacking itself. The snake creatures called Sethrians discovered that their underground tunnel cities were not as safe as they thought. Human mining equipment had been mapping their world for months. The same drills they used for legitimate mining operations could also be used to collapse tunnel systems in very specific ways. On 100 worlds, human sleeper agents revealed themselves. People who had been dismissed as simple traders, miners, farmers, and mechanics suddenly showed their true nature. They were soldiers and saboteurs who had been placed years in advance. The aliens who had spent the afternoon discussing human population control now watched their own civilizations crumble in real time. The species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were being systematically dismantled by the primitive humans. They had planned to enslave. Captain Kang Wu stood calmly in the center of the chaos, his communication device still active in his hand. "You wanted to know what humans do when pushed too far," he said to the panicking aliens. "Now you know we do not make threats, we make preparations." The war that followed was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. The aliens expected massive fleets to meet in space with big ships shooting at each other until one side gave up. They expected traditional battles with honor and rules and predictable outcomes. Instead, they got something that made their worst nightmares seem pleasant. Captain Bei Young commanded a group of ships near the Vorthon homeworld. The Vorthons thought they were safe because their planet had shield generators that could protect entire continents. Their military had never lost a battle in over 2,000 years. They had weapons that could destroy moons and armor that could stop any known attack. But Bei Young did not attack the shields or the weapons or the armor. Instead, she did something the Vorthons never expected. She targeted their food supply. The purple giants needed a special kind of algae that only grew in their orbital farms. Without it, they would starve in weeks. The Vorthons had never considered that someone might attack their food instead of their military. They had spent centuries building the perfect war machine, but they had forgotten that even perfect war machines need fuel. Bei Young ships slipped past all their defenses and destroyed every farm station in the system on Nexus Prime. The crystal beings were trying to rebuild their shattered cities. Captain Lim Da arrived with what looked like a humanitarian mission. Her ships carried construction equipment and medical supplies. The crystals were grateful for human help even though they had been planning to enslave humanity just days before. What the crystal beings did not know was that Lim Da construction equipment was designed to make their problems worse. Every new crystal structure her teams built contained tiny flaws, microscopic cracks that would spread and grow. The medical supplies contained compounds that would make the crystals more brittle over time. The crystal beings thanked the humans for their generosity while their entire civilization slowly poisoned itself. The most beautiful cities in the galaxy were becoming death traps, and their builders had no idea Commander Park. So was dealing with the snake creatures called Sethrians. These aliens lived in vast underground tunnel networks that stretched across multiple continents. They thought they were safe in their deep burrows, where no surface dweller could reach them. Park so did not try to go underground. Instead, she brought the underground to the surface. Her team had spent months mapping the tunnel systems while pretending to conduct geological surveys. They knew exactly where every tunnel was, and more importantly, they knew where the water table was. When Park So activated her plan, she did not use weapons, she used water. The same mining equipment that had been mapping Sethrian tunnels was now drilling deep holes in very specific locations. When the holes reached underground rivers, the water followed the path of least resistance, straight into the tunnel systems. The Sethrians who had ruled underground for millennia found their homes flooding with no way to stop it. Their tunnel cities became underground lakes, Their escape routes became death traps. Their safe burrows became watery graves. Captain Moon. Ja was handling the bird people from the cloud worlds. These aliens lived on floating cities high in the atmosphere of gas giant planets. They thought they were untouchable in their sky kingdoms, where no ground-based species could survive. Moon Ja's approach was elegant in its simplicity. She did not try to reach the floating cities. Instead, she changed the weather. The bird people cities stayed aloft using complex atmospheric currents that had been stable for thousands of years. But atmospheric currents could be changed if you knew how. Human weather control satellites began subtle alterations to planetary wind patterns. It took weeks for the changes to build, but when they did, the results were devastating. The floating cities found themselves in permanent storms. Their delicate atmospheric cities were torn apart by winds they could not escape. The Zephyrian Collective was still dealing with Commander Yangsu virus in their hive mind, but the problems were getting worse instead of better. Every time they tried to fix the computer infection, it spread to new parts of their network. Their perfect unity was becoming perfect chaos. Yangsu had not just created one virus, she had created a family of viruses that evolved and adapted. Each time the Zephyrians found a cure, a new strain would appear. The hive mind that had been their greatest strength was becoming their greatest weakness. As long as they stayed connected, the infection would keep spreading. Captain Chomin had moved on from destroying crystal cities to something even more creative. She was teaching the crystal beings to fight each other. Different crystal communities had slightly different harmonic frequencies. Chomin teams were broadcasting modified songs that made one crystal city sound like enemies to another. The crystal beings who had lived in perfect harmony for millions of years were now at war with each other. They could not understand why their neighbors had suddenly become hostile. The beautiful music that had once united their species was now driving them to destroy each other. The most brilliant part of the human strategy was that none of it looked like war to outside observers. If any neutral species investigated, they would find mining accidents, tunnel collapses, weather anomalies, computer malfunctions, and civil wars. Nothing pointed directly to human involvement. The humans were fighting a war without appearing to fight at all. They were destroying civilizations while looking like helpful neighbors. They were committing genocide while providing humanitarian aid. The galaxy was learning that humans were not just dangerous. They were terrifyingly creative in their danger. Admiral Kang Wu now commanded the entire human war effort from his flagship Terran's Resolve. The ship itself was a perfect example of human deception. It looked like a standard diplomatic vessel, but it contained the most advanced command and control systems ever built. Every human action across the galaxy was coordinated from this one ship. Kang Wu could see the entire war in real time and adjust strategies as needed. When the Vorthons tried to adapt to food supply attacks, he switched to targeting their manufacturing. When the crystal beings developed virus scanners for their networks, he had his teams change tactics to social manipulation. The aliens were learning that fighting humans was like fighting smoke. Every time they thought they had grasped the human strategy, it would change into something completely different. The species that had ruled the galaxy through superior technology and ancient wisdom were being outmaneuvered by creatures they had dismissed as primitive animals. 6 months after Captain Kang Wu first spoke in the Galactic Council chamber, the war was effectively over. Not because of massive battles or heroic last stands, but because the alien civilizations had simply collapsed from within. Their food systems had failed their cities, had crumbled, their fleets had turned on themselves, and their communication networks had become unusable. The humans had won not by being stronger or more advanced, but by being more creative and adaptable. They had taken every alien strength and found a way to turn it into a weakness. They had used the aliens' own technologies and biology against them. They had fought a war using the enemy's own tools. But the most terrifying thing for the surviving aliens was not that they had lost. It was that they still did not fully understand how they had lost. The humans had defeated them so completely and so cleverly that even in defeat, they could not figure out exactly what had happened. The galaxy was about to learn that winning the war had only been the beginning. Captain Kang Wu had spent 3 years planning the destruction of alien civilizations. Now he was about to show them what humans planned to build in their place. The once mighty Vorthan Empire was begging for food. Admiral Kang Wu stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the most powerful species in the galaxy send desperate messages asking for basic supplies. Their purple skin had turned pale and their 6 arms trembled with weakness as they recorded their pleas for mercy. Captain Bei Young had destroyed every food production facility in Vorthan space, but she had done it so carefully that it looked like equipment failures and accidents. The Vorthans had no proof that humans were responsible. They could only watch their people slowly starve while their enemies offered to sell them emergency rations at fair prices. The crystal beings of Nexus Prime were facing something even worse than hunger. Their cities were crumbling from within. Every building, every monument, every work of art was slowly falling apart. The microscopic flaws that Captain Lim Da had introduced were spreading like a disease through their crystalline structures. What made it truly horrifying was that the crystal beings had thanked the humans for their help. They had given medals and honors to the same people who were destroying their civilization. The humans had smiled and accepted the awards while watching. Their victims praised their own executioners. Elder Crystal Harmony speaker Tae-hoon was one of the few crystal beings who suspected the truth. He had studied human behavior during the war and noticed patterns that others missed. But when he tried to warn his people, they would not listen. They could not believe that such a primitive species could orchestrate such complex destruction. The Sethrian tunnel cities were now underwater graveyards. Commander Park. So teams were offering to help with rescue operations. They brought powerful pumps and drilling equipment to drain the flooded tunnels. But somehow the flooding always got worse after the humans left. Sethrian colony leader Hae Wan watched his people die in the dark waters below. Had been one of the loudest voices calling for human enslavement in the council meetings. Now he was trapped in a surface shelter begging the same humans for help. The irony was not lost on him, but survival mattered more than pride. The bird people from the cloud worlds had lost half their floating cities to the storms that Captain Moonja had created. The survivors were learning to live on solid ground for the first time in their species' history. They built crude shelters on planetary surfaces, while human aid workers taught them how to farm. And mine-flying leader Jun-sik remembered the days when his people looked down on surface dwellers from their beautiful sky cities. Now he was learning to dig in dirt like an animal. His wings were useless in the heavy atmosphere near the ground. His people were becoming something they had never been before. Ground crawlers dependent on human charity. The Zephyrian collective was tearing itself apart from within. Commander Yang Su virus had evolved beyond anything they could control. Different parts of their hive mind were now convinced that other parts were enemies. They were fighting a civil war against themselves with no way to stop. Collective Voice Min Jung tried desperately to restore unity to her people, but every attempt at communication only spread the infection further. The beautiful shared consciousness that had made them powerful was now their greatest weakness. They were learning that perfect unity could become perfect destruction, but it was not just the major species that suffered. The smaller alien races who had supported human enslavement were discovering that humans had very good memories. Captain Nam Ho was dealing with the trader consortium who had planned to buy human slaves for their mining operations. The traders had thought they were too small for humans to bother with revenge. They were wrong. Human merchant ships began undercutting their prices and offering better services to their customers. Within months, the consortium that had controlled interstellar commerce for centuries was bankrupt. Mining Guild leader Park Dahl found his organization facing mysterious equipment failures. Every drill would break down, every transport ship would have engine problems, every communication system would malfunction. It was like the universe itself was working against them. The truth was simpler than cosmic intervention. Human engineers had been studying alien technology for 3 years. They knew exactly how to make any piece of equipment fail in ways that looked completely natural. The same humans who had been dismissed as too primitive to understand technology were now using that technology to destroy its creators. What terrified the aliens most was not the destruction itself, but how polite the humans were about it. Human aid workers would arrive with supplies and sympathy. They would help with rescue operations and offer technical assistance. They would provide medical care and temporary housing, but somehow things always got worse after the humans left. Food supplies would spoil faster than expected. Temporary shelters would collapse in minor storms. Medical equipment would malfunction at critical moments. It was as if the humans were helping and harming at the same time. Captain Cho Min was running refugee camps for crystal beings who had lost their homes. She provided food, shelter, and medical care with perfect efficiency. Her camps were models of humanitarian organization, but the crystal refugees noticed that they felt weaker and more fragile every day. The truth was that everything in the camps, from the air filters to the food additives, was designed to make crystal beings more brittle. Cho Min was slowly poisoning her patients while curing their immediate problems. She was a doctor who healed and harmed with the same hands. Some aliens began to understand what was happening. Elder Moon Ja of the Harmony Singers had tried to warn the council about underestimating humans. She had studied human history and seen the patterns, but no one had listened to her peaceful species. Now Moon Ja was one of the few alien leaders that humans treated with genuine respect. Her people had opposed human enslavement and had paid the price for speaking truth to power. The Harmony Singers were offered real aid with no hidden poison because they had shown actual friendship. The lesson was becoming clear across the galaxy. The species that had planned human destruction were facing their own destruction. The species that had remained neutral were being ignored. The species that had supported humans were being helped. The humans were not randomly cruel. They were precisely just. Admiral Kang Wu received surrender requests every day. The same species that had laughed at human primitiveness were now begging for mercy. The same aliens who had planned human enslavement were now offering to become human servants. The tables had turned completely, but the most surprising thing was what the humans offered in return. Instead of slavery or genocide, they offered something no one expected: partnership on equal terms. The species that had been planning human destruction were being offered a chance to rebuild as human allies. The Vorthan Prime Minister came aboard Kang Wu flagship in person. His 6 arms shook as he knelt before the human admiral. He offered to give the Vorthan Empire as tribute to humanity. He promised that his people would serve humans forever, if only they would be allowed to live. Kang Wu looked down at the alien who had laughed at human weakness just months before. "Stand up," he said. "Your people will not be slaves. We do not want servants or tribute. We want partners, but only if you can. Learn to see us as equals." The galaxy was learning that humans were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They did not want to rule over other species. They wanted to remake the galaxy into something fair, where no species would be dismissed as primitive or worthless. But first, every alien civilization had to learn the same lesson that humans had learned through centuries of war and suffering. Strength comes not from thinking you are superior to others, but from knowing that anyone can be dangerous if you push them too far. 2 years had passed since Captain Kang Wu spoke his first words in the Galactic Council chamber. The Great Hall looked different now. Human engineers had rebuilt it to be a perfect circle instead of the old design that put some species higher than others. Every seat was at the same level. Every voice carried the same distance. Every species had equal space. Admiral Kang Wu sat at the head of the circular chamber, but not as a conqueror. The assembled aliens and humans had voted him to be the first leader of the new galactic coalition. His uniform was different now, too. Instead of pure human military colors, it carried symbols from every species that had joined the alliance. The Vorthan delegation sat nearby. Their purple skin had returned to its normal color now that human food shipments kept them fed, but they looked different than before. Their 6 arms no longer gestured with arrogance. Instead, they moved carefully, respectfully. Former Prime Minister Dal Hun bowed his head when he spoke, acknowledging that his species had learned the price of calling others primitive. The crystal beings had rebuilt their cities with human help, but the new structures were different. They combined crystal harmony with human engineering, creating buildings that were both beautiful and practical. Elder Harmony speaker Tai Hoon had become the chief architect of the new crystal cities, working alongside human designers to create something neither species could have built alone. Captain Lim Da sat with the crystal delegation. Now her role had changed from secret saboteur to open partner. The same hands that had once planted microscopic flaws in crystal structures now helped design buildings that would last for millions of years. The crystal beings had forgiven her deception because they understood she had been fighting for her species' survival. The Sethrian tunnels were no longer underwater Commander Park, so had worked with Sethrian engineers to create the most advanced underground cities in galactic history. The new tunnel systems combined Sethrian digging expertise with human water management, creating subterranean civilizations that could survive any surface disaster. Colony leader Haiwan had become one of humanity's strongest supporters. He told other species about the day he watched his people drowning in their own tunnels, while human rescue workers risked their lives to save Sethrian children. The humans could have let his species die, but instead, they chose to help rebuild something better. The bird people had learned to love their new ground cities. Captain Moonjaw had worked with them to create structures that reached toward the sky while staying firmly planted on solid ground. The new cities used anti-gravity, technology that the bird people shared combined with human construction methods that could withstand any storm-flying leader. June 6 spoke often about the change in his people. They had once thought that living on the ground was beneath them now. They understood that every environment had its own beauty and challenges. His species had gained something they never knew. They were missing the ability to appreciate different ways of life. The Zephyrian Collective had solved their hive mind virus, with human help, but they had chosen to change how their shared consciousness worked. Commander Yang Su had helped them create a new type of connection that allowed individual thought while maintaining group coordination. The Zephyrians were now stronger than ever, because they could think as one or as many depending on what the situation required. Collective voice Min Jung credited humans with saving her species from destruction. The virus that had torn them apart had actually revealed a dangerous weakness in their old hive mind system. The new system was immune to similar attacks because it was designed with human cybersecurity principles. The smaller species had learned their lessons too. The Trader Consortium now worked as part of the galactic economy instead of trying to control it. They discovered that fair trade made everyone richer than monopolies ever could. Mining guild leader Park Dell had rebuilt his organization as a cooperative where every species shared profits and decisions equally. But the most important change was not in any individual species. It was in how they all thought about each other. The old Galactic Council had been based on the idea that some species were naturally superior to others. The new coalition was built on the principle that every species had something valuable to contribute. Human scientists worked with crystal beings to develop new materials. Vorthon engineers combined their multiple arms with human creativity to build incredible machines. Sethrian tunnel expertise merged with human mining technology to extract resources from impossible locations. Bird people air travel knowledge mixed with human logistics to create the fastest shipping network in galactic history. Ambassador Shitai Park So stood to address the assembly. She had replaced the human diplomats who had tried so hard to make the old system work. Her job was easier because she did not have to convince anyone that humans deserved respect. The war had already settled that question permanently. We gather today to celebrate something that has never existed before. She said, a galaxy where no species is considered primitive, where no world is dismissed as worthless, where no people are seen as less than others. We have learned that strength comes not from domination but from cooperation. The assembly erupted in sounds of approval. Vorthon foot-stomping crystal harmonics, Sethrian hissing birdsong and human applause all blended together in a symphony of agreement. It was a sound that had never been heard before because the species making it had never truly been equals before. Elder Moonjaw of the Harmony Singers sat in a place of honor near the front. Her people had been right to warn against underestimating humans, but more importantly, they had been right to believe that different species could work together. Her peaceful philosophy had become the foundation of the new galactic government. The memorial wall behind the speaker's platform told the whole story carved in stone from every member world. It listed the names of humans who had died defending their colonies from alien attacks. It also listed the names of aliens who had died during the war that followed. But most importantly, it listed the names of beings from all species who had worked to build something better. The inscription at the bottom was simple but powerful. written in every language of every member species. It said strength through unity, wisdom through humility. Never again will we judge others by their appearance or dismiss them for being different, Admiral. Kang Wu looked around the chamber at representatives from dozens of species working together on problems that affected everyone. Climate control for worlds with mixed populations, resource sharing between species with different needs, defense planning that protected everyone equally, cultural exchange programs that let every species learn from all the others. The galaxy had learned what humans called the underdog principle. Never assume that someone is weak just because they seem different. Never believe that primitive means powerless. Never think that quiet means afraid. The most dangerous enemies are often the ones you never see coming. Captain Kang Wu had spoken once after 3 years of silence. His words had started a war that changed everything, but the war had not been the real victory. The real victory was what came after, when former enemies became partners, and the galaxy learned to see strength in diversity instead of superiority and sameness. The old galaxy had been ruled by fear and domination. The new galaxy was built on respect and cooperation. It was not perfect, and there were still problems to solve, but for the first time in galactic history, every species had an equal voice in solving them. The lesson carved into every government building on every world was clear. Underestimate others at your own peril, but more importantly, never let others feel like they have nothing left to lose. Because sometimes the quiet ones who never speak are the ones who have been listening and learning and preparing for the day when silence finally ends.